Hello and welcome to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. If you're watching the video and if you're listening to the audio, you heard our intro at the beginning. And I am your host, Steve Green. Happy to be here with you. Happy to have you here with us. And I have a returning guest today who's become a good friend. He's a great teacher, great firefighter, just coming off a great 2 days of presentations at FIREHOUSE Expo, and that is Captain Mike Daley. He is a 35-year fire service veteran serving in a department in Monroe Township, New Jersey. He serves as a staff instructor in 2 county fire academies and is an adjunct professor at 2 county colleges, developing and delivering FBSHE-approved curriculum in fire behavior in building construction. He is a 20-year member of New Jersey Task Force Number 1 USAR, serving as a rescue squad officer, and is a FEMA lead instructor in the Structural Collapse Specialist Program. Mike has a bachelor's degree in public safety and holds certifications as a fire officer, fire instructor, fire official, FEMA All Hazards Operations Section Chief, on-scene incident commander, fire investigation technician, certified fire and explosions investigator, and has completed the Knowledge Fire Dynamics program from the International Association of Arson Investigators. Mike has earned the international accreditation as a chief training officer and a fire officer from the Center for Public Service Excellence. He is a member of the Institution of Fire Engineers and serves as a contributing technical editor for Firehouse Magazine and Firehouse.com, and now he's the author of the Fire Studies column for Firehouse Magazine. He is currently serving as president of Project Kill the Flashover, a training and research organization that provides training in advanced fire behavior to students from all over the world. And we will put his contact information in the show notes. Cap, it's wonderful to have you back again.
Always great to be here, Steve. Really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation, as always.
Well, thank you. And it's always great because we always receive wonderful comments coming back on social media and our postings about every time you're here on the show. And today, I guess we're going to talk about 2 things. Number one, let's talk a little bit about, in this first segment, talk about the terrific classes. You had 2 days of classes that you taught at FIREHOUSE Expo this year in Columbus. And I heard words that may be moving to someplace else coming up. I don't know, something about South Carolina or North Carolina, someplace like that. Yeah, you hear?
Yeah, no, you're hearing correct. This was the last year in Columbus. Columbus was a great city. Columbus, Ohio Fire Academy was a huge bonus for us to be working with. They were fantastic to us. Logistically, we couldn't have asked for a better team. We had a blast every time we were there. The people were there. The classes were great. The students were fantastic. Columbus Fire Department was always very supportive. I can't say enough about the instructors that helped us out there with our extrication class this year. Great people. It's kind of, it's kind of sad in a way, melancholic, if you will, because you get used to working in an area and you make great contacts. Jack Smith, the chief out there at the Ohio Fire Academy, was a fantastic resource for us. And now, just when you start to work really well with people, now you move on, and you open a new chapter, which is a good thing because you get new experience. I understand we're going to North Carolina now, and we're looking forward to see what comes out of the new show with the new purpose, if you will, new direction that the conference is headed. I think it's going to be a great thing. I'm kind of excited to see where it goes, and always willing to be a positive part of it anytime I can. So we'll see where.
Sure. And we would both be remiss if we didn't take a moment here to wish our mutual dear friend, Andy Starnes, congratulations on his retirement from Charlotte Fire after 25 years there, and continuing on with Insight Training, LLC, and other new vistas for him.
I talked with Andy the day before he retired. I reached because, he retired the same day I was in the firehouse. So had I had an opportunity to get out there, obviously I would have. We're going to make some plans to go out and see him, hopefully in a month or 2. We got a possible house for a burn house with Kill the Flashover, so hopefully we'll see him then. Andy's not leaving the fire service. Andy's left the firehouse. There's a difference. Right. I don't think Andy will ever leave the fire service. Andy's got a wealth of knowledge that he's still willing to share with everybody. I know they just released an announcement. He's running a podcast, I think October 30th, 3-hour free class on tactical thermal imaging use on Fireground, which I think, he's probably one of, if not the expert in that field. And here's a guy that's just, we were just blessed to meet him and be friends with him. I was blessed to be brought in with him and his father, Joe Starnes, to kill the flashover. And what we've been able to do together. We just actually traded some videos. I was doing some fire behavior experiments with my college class. We videoed some of the stuff on oriented fuel and heat travel. And I was actually, we were just trading some texts last night about saturation of fuel and stuff back and forth. And it's just one of those things, it could be 10 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's always, Andy's always on point. Andy's always ready to talk, and Andy's always ready to lend a hand. So he's got some great things coming up, and I wish him a lot of luck.
Yeah, we both do. He's become a dear friend, though we've never been able to meet in person yet, but he's still probably one of my best friends and a great contributor and totally selfless in everything he does. So to Andy, from both of us, we wish you well, we're going to say it's a retirement from the firehouse, as Mike just said, but not retire from everything you do to help and make the fire service a better place for all of us and a safer place for all of us.
Agreed.
So, Mike, let's talk about this, getting back to Firehouse. And I know we have to say Andy had a big booth out there this year.
Oh, absolutely.
Training and did really well out there. I watched all the posts on social media. So, let's talk about your classes there and the great response that you had at Firehouse a couple of weeks ago.
Well, we started out with, we were actually blessed to be able to be chosen to do 2 days of hands-on training with modern solutions for some problematic extrications. And we had 2 days, 2 8-hour days of hands-on training, one class repeated 2 days in a row, and not your typical things that you would normally see at, I don't want to call it a basic or a routine extrication, but some of the things that we came up with to really prepare the rescuer for those high risk, low frequency events that we see and how you would deal with them. And it's not just, it's solving the problem behind the incident and not the vehicle. So to give you an example of some of the things that we did, I brought 2 instructors out with me, Sean McCree out of Atlantic County, who's was on a job with me as well. He's on the 4th platoon. He worked yesterday. A great training officer with me in Monroe as well. And he's been doing extrication for the better part of 2 decades in Atlantic County on the expressway going into Atlantic City. So he runs a very busy section of New Jersey, as well as a guy, Mike Wazalowski, Jr. out of Somerset County, who's a fantastic instructor out of Somerset Fire Academy. We kind of spearheaded this to say, okay, what can we do to make it just beyond the basic class? So some of the scenarios we gave, like one of the scenarios, we had a car with a concrete slab on it. And now it's think about going down the highway, and we've had a few of these where something comes loose on a tractor trailer or a commercial vehicle versus a car, and something comes loose on the vehicle, winds up on the car. And now the problem becomes, do you lift, do you stabilize, do you tie together, and how do you still deal with the patient? So we now have a slab of concrete on top, and the first thing that the students immediately try to do, and rightfully so, is to move it. And sometimes that's not the greatest thing to do. Lots of times the best thing to do is make it one with the vehicle and deal with it with the vehicle. But the other issue is, at some point, and in the scenario we had, the weight of the slab, calculating using the calculation of views that you saw, I anticipated the slab at about 4,800 pounds roughly. So now you've got 2.5 tons laying on top of the car, on top of the passenger compartment with a patient, and everybody wants to push the slab off. Well, technically, that's not really the best thing. Sometimes just lifting the roof results in lifting the slab. And we think of all the tools that we have that we can use to lift. 5,000-pound slab really isn't nothing in the big picture. So sometimes it just changes their thought. Legend Wazalowski had the car through the house. We set a Connex box to simulate a residential dwelling with a TV and a rocking chair and a victim in it. We put the car through the open doors on top of a set of jersey barriers that we set up as, say, a foundation where the car went through. And now the car, not only do we have a patient in the car, we have a patient under the car in a chair where the front of the car is leaning on top of the patient. Now,
Right.
Sean had an incident that we recreated out of Atlantic County where he had a vehicle up against a concrete barrier, but it wasn't up against it from the side. The nose of the car, the engine compartment was down, and the rear of the car was straight up in the air. And how do you stabilize? How do you tie the car back? How do you get patient access? How do you cut through the car without sending it over to the other side? Because on the other side, in Sean's incident, was a ravine. There was no operating on the other side. So you have one side of the car. You have we set up limited access with barriers, like you have traffic coming through. How do you deal with this problem? We had set the class for 25 students, and we were full. We were overfilled every day. We had a great turnout. And once we finished with those scenarios, we had 2 cars under a commercial vehicle. We used a couple school buses as the commercial vehicles. And we had patients in each car, and one was under the bus sideways, one was under the bus in the rear. The bus was very unstable, so as a crew, the class attacked the scenario in the afternoon, and it became a lift to a stabilize to a drag of one vehicle to a significant extrication problem with victims that we had preset each day in the vehicles when we set them. So it wasn't just getting to the victim. So now you have the victim. There's a limb wrapped around the steering wheel. In a couple of our scenarios, we had penetration wounds where fences went through the victim and the seats, and now some victims came out with the seat and the actual pipe that went through them. So it wasn't just cut the door, remove the roof. Even though you could get to the patient, there were still problems that we had to deal with. So we had students from Arizona to California to Michigan to Florida. We had a couple of military firefighters with us. We had people from Maine. We were pretty well represented nationwide with students, all the way from 1 year to 2 years of experience, all the way to chief officers with 20 to 30 years experience, including a Pittsburgh EMS deputy chief with 32 years of experience come and told us never has he ever taken a class like this before, and just sang praises of the ability for us to deliver the material as we did. And we got a lot of really great feedback. We cut through 16 cars and 2 commercial vehicles in 2 days.
Wow.
And the only reason that number is what it is because we ran out of cars. We probably could have kept going. I mean, Ohio Fire Academy, logistically, resource-wise, was phenomenal. They got us vehicles. They had a lot of vehicles that they were using, not only for us, for their recruit class. They had other agencies coming in that week, so we were really limited to 16 cars. I say limited. I mean, that's really kind of what a great logistical resource to have that. Their rescue that they provided equipment for us with had 4 sets of tools on it, 2 electric, 2 hydraulic. Amphius, I got to thank Citizens First Fire Training as well. Chris Kessinger, phenomenal guy, phenomenal resource.
Great guy.
Yeah, came out with 2 sets of tools, jumped in wherever he could. We had, when I tell you logistically, I could not have asked for better legal support. Really couldn't. And instructor-wise, I got to give the 2 guys I brought out with me credit. And I had asked them early on, I said, I'm putting this class in. I says, I have a list of instructors, and you 2 are at the top. And you guys can decide whether you want to come or not. And they've never, ever, ever taught out of New Jersey. Never. And you know what? And a lot of people said to me, why did you pick those guys? Well, I got to tell you, you are not, nobody's ever really, I don't think, fortunate enough to just say, hey, I got this great idea, put me in here. And they go, oh, sure. I got baptized into conference teaching by Mike Brown out of Virginia Beach with Spec Rescue, who let me teach with him when he did his O course out in FDIC, and Lee Hollins out of Florida, which I'm sure you know, invited me to come out and do hands-on training for FDIC. And you know, if those 2 guys never would have reached out to me and said, hey, we think you have what it takes to be a decent instructor out here, I would have never gotten out there. So one of the things that I always said when I do hands-on training, and I did some hands-on stuff, we did some trench class for FDIC, I always brought guys who never taught outside the state with me. And the reason for that is somebody did it for me. Somebody had enough faith, for lack of a better word, in me to say, okay, he's a squared away person, and I know I can trust him. And we work with people who are really, really good instructors and really good leaders and consummate professionals in the fire service. And sometimes they just need an opportunity for other people to see them. And these two guys I've always worked with have been great. Actually, I received the Valor Award with Sean for a rescue that we did 2018 when we were on the same crew. So I know his work ethic, and I know what he's about, and I know what he's about because I've worked with Mike for the better part of 20 years. And it was just no-brainer to bring these guys out, and they were flawless. They really were. Everybody's like, "Oh, Mike, you put on a great class." No, I didn't. I put smart people, educated people. I put professional instructors in a position to be able to deliver the material. That's all I did. And I didn't lead anybody. I had my station. I worked my extrication just like Sean worked his, like Mike worked his. And when it was all said and done, I said to those two guys, "You guys are running the afternoon scenario. I'm the safety guy. I'm floating around." And they're like, "Well, you want us to run it? Absolutely. Why not?" "Yeah, but it's your class." "No, it's not. It's our class. And if I didn't think you guys could be here to do this, you wouldn't be standing here next to me. Do you? I'll jump in where I need to." And it went great. I couldn't have asked for better results. We had a lot of really great feedback. And when I just got the results back from Firehouse Support, who sends out our evaluations, and again, glowing endorsements for the instructors, which I knew because Mike and Sean are really squared away guys. They really are. And everybody asked again to see us come back. So hopefully, with the new format and a new location, I don't think it'll happen in the first year, only because it's new. And I think we got I'm sure they have some growing pains to go through with a new format and a location, but I see us coming back. I really do. So the hands-on class went really well.
Right. That's good to hear. And, having been able, not as an attendee, but as a visitor back in 2000 in Baltimore, when we were still back there, we had my two partners and I, we had our putting our TV show together back then, and we got to go there and walk through and meet people. I was lucky to meet Chief Alan Brunacini at that. We were just walking the halls, and a person was with us, leading us through, said, "I'd like you to meet this guy, Chief Bruno." I said, "No, Bruno's last name?" He goes, "No." I said, "You mean Brunacini?" He goes, I said, "Yeah." He goes, "No, I can't. Sorry, I can't." He goes, "What do you mean you can't?" I said, "No, he's like the icon. I mean, I started when I was a firefighter in '77. I was reading his first articles in Firehouse magazine. I can't just say hello." He goes, "Sure you can." And that was one of several people I got to meet who, to me, I was already out of the fire service by then, but I got to meet people who I read about every month or read their articles every month and learned so much over that time. And I still love to learn from the trades. I may, be too old to do anything but fire police, which we don't have down here in South Florida at all. Although I tried to get our local department to do it, but I still love the learning part of being a firefighter. And,
well, Chief Brunacini to me was always the definition of the guy who you wouldn't think so. It was approachable, would give you anything. You can talk about anything with him, and there wasn't anything that was off limits or not able to be discussed with him. And he had and I really believe this, he had an ability to get the hardest material across in the simplest way that people would just embrace in the way he would deliver. And he was one of those guys that, and I still have his books somewhere on my bookcase. I think I read his Fire Command book in '85 and took the class, the 2-day Fireground Commander class in '85 when it came to Jersey. So, yeah, absolutely. One of the best.
And to be able to, if you're a firefighter and you're looking to learn, and you and I are both very big on making sure firefighters continue to learn in their career, they have to. You just we can't afford to be stagnant in our learning efforts as firefighters. We just don't have that luxury. because as you just said, the scenarios that you created at the expo are not scenarios that a lot of people are going to run into on a regular basis. But by you specializing in those scenarios, you now gave everybody who attended those classes that extra bit that if and when that scenario happens in their district, they have a better idea how to approach it and how to deal with it because of the class that you taught.
And I'll tell you, that's not an easy thing to pull off. I will tell you. And I'm sure if Sean and Mike were here, they would tell you we met. We met at our firehouse probably 8 times before we even went out there. So we had meetings. We talked about, okay, how are we going to do this? What do we need? We got to put our logistics list in. What do you want? Is there anything specific? How do you anticipate this going? Let's run through the time frame. What happens if this doesn't work? What do you think the audience is going to be? And one of the biggest things we struggled with is do we make it? Have we made it too hard for every student? And the reason I said this is because, and I remember when I went as a student to a lot of shows and a lot of conferences, and you know, I took some great stuff, you know, Lee Holland's bus extrication, Johnny O'Connell's structural collapse, and no matter no matter what level you teach at or what level you go to, there's always going to be somebody that's going to pick up the basic stuff. So Gary Haskell is a battalion chief out of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Gary's a rescue manager in Task Force 1, New Jersey. And Gary's probably one of the smartest guys. I think he's forgot more about the world of rescue than I'll ever pray to know in my entire life. And for the 22 years I've been on the team, I've never seen him out of character. He's always had the answers. I was fortunate enough to write a commercial extrication class for the task force. We were going to put all the task force rescue guys through commercial extrication because nobody does it, and we wanted to do it, and we had the opportunity to do it. And I was a diesel mechanic by trade before I was a firefighter, so I had a lot of background in commercial vehicles anyway. So they asked me if I would help Rob McDermott out of Cherry Hill to put this class together. Rob's a great rescue guy, so yeah, absolutely. So now I'm putting this class together, and I'm talking with Gary a week before the class, and I said, so this is what we got planned. He goes, well, what are you going to do about stabilization? What do you mean? I said, Gary, I mean, it's stabilization. You know, I mean, these are rescue guys. I'm standing around, you know, 68 of the best rescue guys in the state. I mean, he says, don't ever forget that the basics have to be covered. And I'm like, Gary, this is an advanced class. I'm going to bore the tears out of this. Would you believe that class, the biggest issue we had that class was stabilization. We had the hardest time with guys and the stabilization. And I never forgot what Chief Haskell told me. You always have to do your hands-on classes as as high as you aim. You have to remember that we all have a starting point. And I had said to you before when we talk about the students that came to Columbus, 2 years, 30 years. How do I keep the 30-year veteran engaged while not overwhelming the 2 year? And the problem with that when we develop those classes is, especially when you're going out and traveling, you don't know who's going to show up. You have absolutely no idea. So that was one of the biggest things that Sean, Mike, and myself had to wrestle with. Have we made this too hard? Have we made it unattainable? Or is it not hard enough? And we always kept in mind that we're going to go back through the basics. We're going to go through the stabilization. We're going to include the simple door pops. We're going to include the dash rolls. We're going to include third door conversions, full side conversions. We're going to crack an egg, as we call it. You know, we're going to do a lot of different things. We're going to show them things that they don't see. And even the ones that have the basic skills, the trick was to show them the application of those basic skills on extraordinary circumstances. Like we had one set up a car through a minivan. How many minivans do you have on the road today? Well, I don't get too many extra cases with minivans. Well, I do here in Monroe. I get a lot of extra cases with minivans because I cover part of the turnpike. But minivans are all their own. We had 3 of them. So we set up an additional scenarios. If one squad got done early, okay, we're going to take the full side of a minivan off. What do you mean the full side? The full side. We're going to take the sliding door and the post and the door, and we're going to take the whole side of the van off. Well, how do you do that? welcome to our class. We're going to show you, because the number of minivans that are on the road today is overwhelming. We have a ton of them coming down the turnpike all the time. We've had many of them. So, and you're right, Steve, those things that you don't see every day, but what do you do? How do you deal with it when you have to? And that's getting lost. I really believe that's getting lost in our profession. Like you said, it really is. A quick story, and then I'll stop on this topic. I had an extrication about 7 years ago, 8 years ago on a turnpike. $150,000 BMW hits a guardrail and wraps the guardrail around. It was almost like shrink wrapped in guardrail. The hardest thing our guys had to do was cut guardrail. I have a rescue full of tools that'll lift a truck 20 feet and cut through anything, and we couldn't cut a guardrail. And I'm saying to myself as a shift commander, how do we not know how to cut a guardrail? How is this? The hardest thing we got to do is cut a guardrail to pop the door. We can't get the guardrail cut. So I called a friend of mine who worked for the county DPW. I said, you got any old guardrail laying around? How much you want? I don't know, 40 feet. He came by with a 100-foot guardrail the next day, and every platoon had 20 foot of guardrail to cut with every piece of equipment that we have on a rig. Why? Well, since then, I have yet to have to cut a piece of guardrail. But you know what? The next time I need to cut a piece of guardrail, I'm going to know exactly how I need to cut it. So, and we miss that. We lose those. We don't learn on those opportunities a lot. We don't come back and say, okay, we didn't do as great. What can we do to do better? Or I call it just enough training or good enough training. Is it good enough, or is it just good enough? You know, and it gets lost in that world.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes we think, well, we got the basics down, so we're all set. But then right after you say that and the tones drop, you know it's going to be something that you did not prepare for. And what do we do now? And you just don't want to be caught like that. We can't afford to be caught with our bunker pants down, to use a colloquialism, because we don't have that luxury. You know, we have people there who depend on us, whether they're in our district or they're just driving through our district and happen to have bad luck befall them, are still going to turn to the people they know as first responders to save their butts. And we damn well better know how to save the butts to the best of our ability. No. Can we be prepared, 100% prepared for every single circumstance that we could? No, there's no way. We can't even predict some of the things that are going to be happening in the next 5 to 10 years. Look what's happening with electric vehicles.
Yeah.
You know, when 5 years ago, nobody else was talking about the dangers of LI batteries, because we were so used to having them on our phones and our computers, and we didn't have these problems, except once in a great while. You heard of it. Now with the EV bikes and stuff like that in the cars, and the runaway conflagration that takes place with these batteries, you can't practice enough.
Yeah, you're right. And the downside is, and we had even said this during our extrication class, nobody gets this year's model unless you have a hook somewhere with an auto manufacturer. Nobody's getting this year's model to practice on. What are we practicing on? We're practicing on the 20-year-old dinosaurs, if you will, in the automotive industry that will have significant steel, high strength, low alloy steel. And I'll be honest with you, the next EV we cut up is our first. We know some basic things about the construction. We can take some EV classes, but as far as cutting them, I think we're all journeymen in this. We're not even sure how to deal with them suppression wise. And there's a lot of different theories out there, and I have my theory. And we do what works in our town, and metropolitan departments are going to do what they do in their town, and small rural departments are going to do what works in their town. And as long as we can figure out how to take those basic skills, or even some of those advanced skills, and apply them based on resources that we have available to us, and that's the way we're going to have to do it. It's going to happen. But what becomes dangerous is thinking that, and like you said, like we know enough, and the public, it deserves better. When they, when we show up, they expect us to solve that problem, and there is so much beyond the basic level of our profession that it's just mind-boggling. To this day, we're still learning. And I go to classes still as well. And because technology changes, fire behavior changes, construction changes, vehicles change, you name it. Oh, OSHA regulations change. You name it. Things change, and we can't get caught with our bunker pants down, like you said. But
Right.
there is a general malaise that I think is running through the emergency services. I'll just talk about the fire service only because that's where most of my focus is on training, where it just falls short a little, somewhat. Don't know why, but it just seems like there is. And kudos to the people that go out and look at these conferences and go to these events out of state and go and get uncomfortable. As I tell people, go get uncomfortable. People that that have never left training from the department that they're a member of. And I have people who go out and look for other training opportunities. You should go out and see how other people are doing things, because your way may be a great way, but it's not the only way. And sometimes there's a better way. So,
absolutely. When I first started, although what I learned through our department was terrific, and we had a couple of other departments join us, but when the chief that first summer sent my buddy and I and our guy who was our mentor, but one of our day people, to the State Fire College, I said, well, why are you sending me? I'm brand new. You have all these other firefighters who are here first. He says, because I want you boys to have the training at the state level, not just from our department. And that's what we did. And we went there, wound up 3 years. First year was basic firefighter 1 and 2. Then second year was hydraulics and pump operations. Third year for me was high level rescue, which, considering I had been acrophobic since I was 5 years old, was a big step for me to take, to come off a 6-story building in a Stokes basket, or be as a victim, or be one of the rescuers taking that basket down that side of that building. But when I did it, and I got down there, and guys I only met at this conference, it was only a 5-day conference, came up to me and said, "Man, that was great. You were terrific." And I said, "No, I was scared stiff." He goes, "No, that's not the issue. We're all scared when we come over that parapet. We may know what to do. It doesn't mean that our heart isn't, pitter-patting, all the time there." He says, "But you did it. You did really well. You stuck with it. Really proud of you, what you did up there, man."
I got to give that officer that sent you a lot of credit, because I will tell you, a lot of people don't do that. And
right.
Kudos to that officer who knew. The future of the fire service is in the people that are just starting out, because that's right now they're moldable, they're influenceable. Actually, I'll give you an example. I was teaching at one of the academies yesterday, and we were doing hose line movement, and I had a kid. I had a recruit who was not in the group that was stretching this line, but caught a problem with it, saw it from across the pad, and went over and fixed it, and went back to doing what he was doing. Now there's a recruit that I want 4 of on my rig. I want the firefighter who's got the mindset to say, okay, there's a lot of dangers around me. There's a lot of things going on. There's an issue. I'm not going to just ignore it. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to take care of that. You know what? That's the recruit. That's the concept. That's the mindset that we want. And to be able to take those new people, you got to support that. You have to let it thrive. And listen,
exactly.
and I've seen a lot of instructors that lose their cool at recruits. And remember, they're brand new, but as much stress as we put them under, you got to give them just as much praise when they do well. You can't always just focus on the negative, And listen, there's going to be a lot of mistakes in recruit school. We get that. That's why they're there. But you got to give the praise where the praise is due too. Somebody has to win. You know what I mean? If you're always going to do something and you're always going to lose, well, nobody's going to want to play anymore.
Right.
Somebody's got to win once in a while. So when you get somebody who's got that mindset, that wants to do the right thing, well, kudos to him, and point that recruit out and say that, firefighter or recruit Brown, Smith, Jones, whatever, did this, and he didn't have to do it. And that's the kind of mindset we want. And kudos to that person for doing that. And that's what we hope that you all do. And then who knows, maybe it actually might help to develop a little bit more of that.
That is so true. When I started out as a teacher, I thought I knew it all already, because I got my first job as a teacher officially. And I was a pretty crappy teacher. Oh, I knew my topic, but I didn't know anything about pedagogy and teaching kids and stuff like that. I just thought, well, I went through religious school. I can teach what I did. Well, I learned when I got my first position as an educational director that I had a lot of learning to do. And so I kind of turned the corner and said, okay, where can I get better training to how to the concept, the principles of teaching. Didn't have to be the topic, but I had to become a better teacher. And so I spent a year and a half with some tutoring and long distance stuff, which wasn't easy in the 70s. But I became a much better teacher because I invested in myself and knowing that I didn't want kids to walk away disgusted from my class. I wanted to say, oh, Mr. Green, I can't wait till next Sunday because we're going to have another good class again. That's what I wanted them to say, but I wasn't feeding them the right stuff to get them interested. I was just being a teacher. This is the book. This is what you're learning, and that's it. Luckily, I had some great people who helped me out, and it changed my life to become a better teacher, and I'm still doing it, 50 years later as well.
It's an interesting paradigm because in the fire service, and as a professional educator, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I've seen it where you have instructors who know their topic but can't deliver it.
Yeah.
And I've seen instructors who have a great delivery but do not have a strong grasp of the material. Which one's worse?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's tough. It is, because if you don't know your material, you can't teach it. That's what it boils down to. Okay? I couldn't teach one of the books of the scrolls if I hadn't read it and knew it myself very well. Now I'm even, here we are all these years later, I'm teaching adult classes for people in their 60s and 70s about the scrolls, teaching them how to read them. And, they think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, but they just didn't have the opportunity years ago or had the chance or the availability, whatever it was, to do it then. But if you don't know your material, you can't teach. You might be a wonderful person, warm, caring, and loving, but that doesn't mean that you know how to teach and what you have to teach. And that's part of it. People, when, I've been very blessed to have a lot of great guests on this show. Of course, you're one of them. And a number of them have gone on after they've been on my show. A couple of months later, they launched their own podcast. People say to me, oh, you must be really ticked off now, aren't you? I said, why? What happened? He goes, well, so-and-so was on your podcast in March. They're launching their podcast July 1st. I said, yeah, so? He says, doesn't that really tick you off because they took from you? I said, they're not taking anything from me. I said, what do you think? I'm the only fire podcast in this country, in this world? I said, I'm just one little guy who was out of the fire service already for 40 years before I started doing this podcast, just trying to give back to what I love. I said, that's all I'm about. People want to do a podcast about the fire service to help? I'm all for it. I'll back them up. I'll tell me what you need for equipment. Can I give you something? What can you do? Because that's another group of people teaching good stuff. And, I've got Nick Peppert and Sean Duffy. I mean, they started out, they started with me, and they even launched Make Do on my podcast because they weren't confident enough to do it. But after 3 shows, I kicked them out of the nest. I said, what do you mean you don't know what to do? You guys are doing great. I'm quiet. I only moderate, tell people when there's a break and when we're coming back. I said, you guys ran the podcast. You guys do it. It's wonderful. Chief Arjuna George, Beneath the Helmet, just came out. He was a guest on my show. He notified me a few weeks later, I think I'm going to launch my own podcast. I said, let me know if you need any help. Whatever I can do it, because you have a great topic on firefighter behavioral health and what you went through personally. You got to get that out there, Chief. That's important. And that's why I still promote at the end of every podcast, we list 12 or 13 other firefighting podcasts that we want people to listen to because they're value. And I'm not the only teacher. I can't be. I can't even hold a match to you or to Andy or some of the great teachers we have today. Even the retired guys, Frank Lieb and even my good friend Chief Burns from Framingham, Mass.
Oh,
Also, Chief
yep.
Burns, and I mean, we grew up in the same town together, a couple of years apart, same schools, but he treated me like I was his equal, but I wasn't. But it was an honor for me to be able to sit and have him as a guest on my show, and then have lunch with him up in Boston a couple of years later, and to sit with him and on one-on-one. But he taught so much just on those two podcasts he had been on, and so I think that one of the strongest things that we profess in this podcast, every episode, every show, is that to be a good firefighter, you have to be ready, willing, and able to continue your learning all the time. And the day that you don't want to learn anymore should be the day that you walk out the door.
I would agree with that.
Because the day that you say, I don't need to learn anymore, I could guarantee you that within the next day to week, 1 week, you're going to have a call that you didn't think you needed to do anything more on, that you're not going to know crap from Shinola what to do.
And we are, and you're right, because we are in a profession that is so dynamic changing. Just look at baseline NFPA 1001 skills for entry-level firefighters. The basic skills change every 5 years. The standard is rewritten every 5 years. The books change. I've been teaching at One Academy for 32 years. You know how many Fire One manuals I've read in the 32 years I've been teaching? I still have most of them. Why? Because there's still some little tiny tidbit on something that I have in that bookcase to my left, your right, that I still keep. My son says to me all the time, when are you going to get rid of them? When I'm done with them. What do you mean when you're done with them? You've read them. That doesn't mean I'm done with them, And that's the thing that bothers me about, and it's on both sides, it really is. One, the students who feel they've reached the pinnacle and are comfortable in their profession and in their capabilities. And listen, career volunteer, part paid, I don't care what it is. You have these people. These people exist. And unfortunately, on the course delivery side, you have I'm an instructor, I know what I need, and this is how I taught it, and I taught it this way for 10 years, I don't have to change. Well, yes, you do. You have to change. Things change. Skills change. Equipment changes. Everything changes. So, and you have to do that. And you have to be able to make that. And to research these training abilities and opportunities that are out there are phenomenal. Can you imagine what it was like? I know you can, because you and I lived it. I got in the fire service 36 going on 37 years ago. I didn't have this opportunity to talk with you like this. I didn't have an opportunity to go kill a flashover and take classes online like we do now. I didn't have the opportunity to sign up for the UL classes and do tested courses with actual data from live fire training just because I couldn't get there. Didn't mean I couldn't get the information. I didn't have the ability to sign on to CFI trainer and update my fire investigation skills either. We didn't have this stuff. And today it's there, and it's amazing how people, to me anyway, don't take advantage of it. I just don't get it.
I was amazed. I think it was this summer when the show LA County Fire and Rescue came on from Dick Wolf, which I gave him a lot of credit for, because I thought it was going to be like Chicago Fire again. And but I was really pleased with it. I think he did a great job. And all of a sudden I hear, well, I grew up, when I was in, we had 1.5 inch lines. Okay. Then later on, after I was out already, then to 1.75 inch. And then we knew we had 2.5s. Our feeder lines were 3 inch. Now you got LDH for 5s. It gets you a lot more water, a lot faster. But I also heard this summer watching the show that they have 2 inch hand lines now. So you're not 1.75 inch, you're not 2.5s, but you got 2 inches. And to me, I said, wow, that's still going to give you a lot of fast water quickly, but it's not going to take 17 people to wrangle the steer. You can still probably 2 guys might even be able to get a 2 inch line, depending on what kind of a nozzle you're using. So to me, I think I said it to my wife out loud. I said, look, we're still developing. We're still changing. We have new stuff coming out all the time. She goes, what's a 1/2 inch difference make? I said, Well, if you're talking the fire service, it can make a big difference.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of water we can get in that extra half inch. And when we need water, we don't just dribble it out. You know, the real line or the garbage line, whatever you want to call it, in your department. Yeah, those are the simple stuff. But sometimes, you know, even at my day, we pulled a real line, and next thing you know, we wound up having to pull an inch and a half because that real line wasn't able to handle what it was. You know,
Right.
so
And, you know, we still have people that believe that, and believe me,
yeah.
I get it. It's a scientific balance of BTU absorption and water delivery. And I hate to say it, but I preach it all the time at the college level and at the entry level in the recruit classes. You have to be good at fire behavior, water supply, and building construction. You have to be good at these things. Period. It's just what it is.
Yeah, it is. And if you don't stay ahead, you fall behind. That's basically what it comes down to. All right. Well, that was really terrific, folks. We're going to come back. We're going to take a little break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking with the captain about fireground strategies dealing with survivability, suppression, and stabilization. Now, we already talked about stabilization, about vehicles and stuff like that, as he taught at Firehouse Expo in Columbus. This is a different type. So we're going to be right back with our guest, Captain Mike Daley, right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to this episode of 5-Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. Joining me today is my returning guest, Captain Mike Daley. He is a captain up in New Jersey. He's on the USAR team up there. He's an instructor. He just came back from teaching a couple of great classes at Firehouse Expo. And right now in this second segment, we're going to be talking about another class that Mike teaches, which is Fireground strategies, and it's broken up into survivability, suppression, and stabilization. And we're not necessarily talking about stabilizing an overturned vehicle or something like that. This is fireground tactics. So, Cap, take it away, please.
Thanks. And again, I was really that a lot of people showed up out in Columbus to hear me talk about these topics. We had a standing room only at one point. We actually had to move a room to a larger room. And it's a good thing that Pete Matthews was there and was able to get us a larger room. But again, people that really want to do the right thing and are embracing learning and going to these venues, that's why we do what we do, to get out there and get as much information out as we can. When we talk about fireground operations, and of all the things that happen in the fire service today, there's a lot of things that happen, and the fires are not as frequent as the apparatus issues or the staffing or the training or the HR issues or the uniforms or turnout gear replacement. There's a lot of moving parts to the fire service. But at some point, a focus has to be on fireground operations. And one of the things that I've always found interesting was if you want to spend 2 or 3 hours of complete repetitive motion and arguing, all you have to do is roll a grenade down a room of firefighters and say, what's the first line in a residential dwelling? And you will get opinions from far, wide, north, south, east, west. And the reality of it is, it has to break down into something simpler than that. And I kind of key it into 3: suppression, survivability, and stabilization. And when I say stabilization of the incident, making the incident better, stabilizing the problem, making that problem go away. So number one, our job in the fire service as firefighters is fire suppression. We have to get focused back on suppression. We can argue about who carries what hose, who pumps at what pressure. You can have, and Brother John Dixon says it's the best when I teach fire behavior with John. You can have your own opinions. You just can't have your own facts. You know, we teach in Kill the Flashover, a college-approved program on fire behavior. This semester, I'm actually teaching fire behavior in one of my college classes on Tuesday nights for 15 weeks. And I have students going through it right now. We're studying through Fire Dynamics book through Gorbett and Farr, which is a collegiate level book. And it is broken down very well to a point where firefighters can even understand this. We got to understand the suppression science. We have to understand why things burn the way they do, why compartmentation is so critical, different types of fuels, how smoke react, and what that does when we show up on the outside, and how we deal with that. And when we talk about fire behavior, if I ask a firefighter what makes a compartment fire, and most of the answers I'll get are the regurgitations of the things that are in the textbook for the recruit class. We need heat, we need air, we need fuel, and when the three get put together out of the fire triangle, it becomes the fire tetrahedron with the uninhibited chemical chain reaction. Great. What are we missing? And I get that pause, I get that stare, I get that blank look. What are you missing? What are we missing? You're missing the compartment. What is the building? What is the compartment? What is the actual enclosure doing that is facilitating rapid extension of combustion? And how is that affecting it? Is it steel? Is it concrete? What is the gypsum board doing? What type of configuration? Is it a peaked roof in an attic bedroom? Is it a 10-foot ceiling in an older house? Is it an 8-foot ceiling in a newer house? Is it in a type 1 concrete building? Is it a type 3 masonry building? Is it in a lightweight wood frame building? These things have to be considered when we talk suppression. And when we talk about the science, now we have to talk about the water. Here's the thing, and I'm going to quote Joe Starnes, and I do this all the time, and I think it's probably one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard in the fire service. Water and flaming combustion cannot occupy the same space. Doesn't happen. And he is 100% right. You can have your own opinions, like Brother Dixon says, but you can't have your own facts. And Chief Starnes is 100% on our job as firefighters. You have to understand combustion, because if you don't understand combustion, you don't understand suppression. You need to understand that you need to flow that much water, not because of the gallonage. And this is the thing that most people get blown away. So, for example, I teach it like this. An average couch puts out 3.7 megawatts of energy. And I can quote where I get those numbers, and I'd be happy to even send them to you. If you shoot me an email, I'll send you where I'm getting my information, because it's all scientific based. It's not my opinion. Nobody wants my opinions. If I use that 3.7 megawatt and calculate how much water it takes to put that couch out, it takes a flow of 168 gallons a minute just to put that couch out. 168 gallons a minute. So a lot of people think, well, I need 168 gallons to put that couch out. No, you flow water for 5 to 7 seconds, roughly, in the right location. Putting it in the right location is suppression. Knowing where the water goes based on air track, fuel, compartmentation, and how the fire is behaving is what we do. That's suppression. Believe it or not, you can probably put that couch out with about 14 gallons, roughly, if you're flowing about 7 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds. You need much energy in the delivery of the water to overcome the energy of combustion that is pushing past you. And that's where we have to change the fire behavior focus. Yeah, we need that much water. Not that it takes 168 gallons of water to put a couch out. It takes that much flow to put that water in the right place for that short period of time, to put that sofa, that burning sofa out. And that's where the suppression education has to change. And we're making small strides in that a little bit, I think, hopefully. Until the flash, we've been making big strides.
1 second, you just brought up a great example, because I've used it, but not in that same situation. But I've said to people that try to explain that in my day, our furniture was made from real wood, and the stuffing was kapok, from the kapok tree. So water could put it out very easily, and our incipient stages could be 4 to 7 minutes back then. Today, since all the wood is basically manufactured, very rarely do you have real wood furniture anymore, and all the stuffing is benzene byproduct, foam. for the most part. Our incipient stage is now 3 to 4 minutes, basically. And as you just said, I could have used less water in my day because it was wood and simple K-Puck bark, as opposed to what the fuel load is today on that same size couch. If the dimensions were identical, just the fabrication was different, there's going to be a big difference of how much water I would flow back then and what you need to flow today to put that same couch out. It's still the basic is suppression, but it's what's burning that changes the ratio of the needs for suppression.
Agreed. And it's interesting you bring up the stuffing. Today it's hydrocarbon based foam. And the interesting thing, a lot of people don't realize, the reason that burns as energetic as it does is there's a significant amount of airspace in a hydrocarbon stuffed chair in the foam. So the surface area of the foam is increased because there's more air in it, which increases speed of flame spread, which increases heat release rate exponentially, which in the end result is influenced by the compartment. And when we start to put it all together, we understand why we need the amount of water that we do.
Exactly.
So now when we talk about suppression, once we get them to believe that, now we got to build this into survivability. Now, and here's, let me just preempt this conversation with respect for Sean Duffy. Sean and I talk about all the time, and Sean teaches a great class, surgical versus survivable. And Sean's got a lot of great information. And we compare notes about this when we talk every time we see each other at a conference. One of the things that I like to focus on, and I'm not saying he doesn't, but I take the survivability end more from a fire behavior standpoint. And I think we both have some great information that parallels each other and should both be considered when we talk about survivability. My point about survivability is, as firefighters, as a fire department, if there's going to be a survivable space in a building, you have to identify it early. Secondly, if you have a space where you anticipate a victim and you don't think it's survivable, that is on you to make it survivable. And this is what we miss. And this is why I said Sean's information and our fire behavior information have to join together, because too many students see this as a separation of search versus suppression. And if we can get everybody back to understand, one doesn't happen without the other. It just doesn't. If you have a room that's cut off, and I put it into 3 different points when it comes to survivability. And we can look at the UL studies. And again, you want the information? I'll send it to you. I have it, and it's available online. Victim survivability is based on 3 things: location in relation to where the combustion process is going on, isolation from the combustion products, and elevation. Those are your 3 points you have to focus on. Location: how far is that victim from the point of combustion? Is the fire room, the bedroom, is that person in that bedroom? What's the survivability chances? Much less than if they weren't in the bedroom.
Right.
Well, let's just put it that. If that bedroom fire has an open door and is communicating down the hallway, there's another bedroom next to that room. Is the door closed? That's isolation. Is that door shut? Is the limited fractional effective dosage, which is the bad stuff in the smoke that's going to kill you, is that being blocked by that door? So the increase of survivability is in the room where it is isolated from that. Now, one of the disservices we do in the fire service, and I got to admit I'm guilty of it from time to time too, when we teach search in recruit training, we do the student a disservice. And the reason for that is we're going to teach you how to do search. Truck's going to force the door. Where are you going to do search? Right at the front door. Why? Well, because that's what we taught you. Well, and I agree. Sometimes you find victims the closest exit. I'm not saying you're not going to find victims, But if we're going to focus on survivability of victims in a building, then you have to focus on the points that are survivable and the ones that are not. If they're, you need to make them survivable. If you can't make them survivable, if they're long gone, then you have to focus on the survivability of those who are isolated. Thirdly, if you have, and I'm sure, I don't know how things are in South Florida, but in Jersey, every 2-story residential house that I've been to, most of the bedrooms are on the second floor. If the fire's on the first floor, the people on the first floor bedroom are not in as much as the people are on the second floor. Mm-hmm. Hot air is more buoyant, cold air is less dense, the cold air is going to stay down, the heat's going to rise, the smoke's going to rise. If the door's open on the second floor, fire's on the first floor, the people that need rescuing are in the bedrooms on the second floor. But where do we teach the student to start a search? Right on the first floor. Do the first floor before you go to the second floor. Stop. Wait a minute. We have to, if you're going to worry about survivability, and we need to, it's our job. Suppression, survivability. Suppression leads to survivability. You have to start focusing on where the survivable spaces are. And you got to put your limited resources there. We're going out the door with 15 firefighters. Some towns are doing it with half. Some towns are doing it with even less. The fact that you have less people, really, to me, and this is just me talking, my focus would be on, I have a limited amount of resources. I know I have a survivable space here. I have to focus those resources on that survivable space if somebody's in there. Those two factors, suppression and survivability, lead to the third, stabilization of the incident. Yeah, you can study for promotional exam and you can regurgitate, as Chief Joe Vallo from Jersey City said, you can regurgitate the poem all you want, you know. And when guys get promoted, what do we study? We study acronyms, we study books, we study glossaries and definitions, and how do we get past those? Because we know the answers better than some of the others. But now, when the oral exam comes out for the promotional, how do you explain what you're going to do with it? And this is where stabilizing the incident is your focus on how you're going to solve that problem. How do you make that problem not get any worse? And that's what we show up to do. Don't make it any worse. And sometimes, I hate to say this, Steve, but sometimes I've seen cases where the fire department shows up and the results would have been exactly the same as if the fire department didn't show up at all. I hate to say it. But we got to get back into that stabilization. How do we stabilize it? How do we deal with that fire? How do we get those people that are savable? How do we get our resources in places to do that? I'm not saying we're not going to go in and do our job. And I think a lot of people think when we talk about oppression and how it supports survivability, there's a lot of people in the fire service who say, well, you want to do this, hit it hard from the yard or flow water transitional, or you don't want to go in and do your job. No, that's not the case. That's really not the case. I want to do my job. I want to do my job, and I want to give Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Jones, the most potential for survivability. Because here's the thing, Mrs. Smith or Mrs. Jones is laying on the floor in that room where it's getting really in her nylon nightie, and she's not saying to herself, boy, I hope the first in engine company stretches in through the front door and goes offensive. She doesn't care about that. All she knows is that she's burning, and she wants to stop burning. We want her to stop burning. So we have to start looking at the coordination of suppression and survivability that leads to the stabilization overall of the incident. And when we can understand that the two have to feed off each other, I think we would be better off. I really do.
I think it's a great point. And to back it up, I would say that there was a video on social media, I guess it was about a year ago, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But the first arriving department came to a working multi-story home, and the fire was on the A side, right in where the driveway turns around, and it was ripping, and there were people upstairs at the window. So you couldn't hear who ordered what, but they put in, they did a 2-inch it's a 2.5 inch, through one of the bottom windows, and had another team go around to get upstairs, got the people up, but that fast water just at that bottom level, that first level, gave them enough time to get upstairs and get the two adults who were upstairs out of the house. Yes, we have our procedures that we teach, and how to come up, how to catch the hydrant, how to pull, which line to pull, depending on what the initial IC tells you to do or something like that. But sometimes you got to think with your bootstraps and say, how do I stabilize? How do I suppress and create survivability in the fastest time possible with hopefully the least amount of danger to the occupants? Well, they were both at the windows upstairs, knocking on the windows, and the fire was clearly there. So to me, I didn't think of it, but I'm sure glad I saw it on that posting on social media, because they were able to bring them out. In the description, they were able to get upstairs, get them out of the house, and then we were able to suppress the rest of the fire. But it's not what we teach in the academies. It's not what we teach in our classes. It's a matter of thinking, having an officer or a pump operator, somebody who really can think while all the cogs are turning and still see a little bit more and what might be a better way of handling things. In this case, that was the better situation.
I'm going to quote Chief Joe Starnes again. Best chart wins. What was the end result? Fast water, quick rescue. It worked. And this has got to be, and I'm glad you brought it up, Steve, because that's a great, I'm going to have to look for this video. I'd like to be able to see that, because it certainly sounds exactly like the topic we were just talking about. I just had a firefighter for my shift. He's been on a job 17 years, assigned to the truck. He's assigned to me. Tomorrow we're going out, we're going to go see if he can flow water. He came in 3 weeks ago. He goes, "Oh, when do I drive?" I said, "When I say you can." "What do you mean?" It's like, "I got to qualify you." "I've been here 17 years. Do you know how to make water? You know how to make water out of that rig? When's the last time you drove that rig?" "Oh, it's been a while." "Right. That's why we're going out. Because I want to make sure when I tell you what I need, you know exactly what I need, and you'll be able to give me what I need." It's not a punishment. It's not a degradatory comment of his abilities. He's a very good fireman. I just don't know when the last time was he drove an engine, drove a ladder truck for the last 17 years. All right. So let's put him out, So, and we got to get back to that. We have to get back to this is what's expected of you. This is what we focus on: suppression, survivability, which leads to stabilization. In the 30 plus years I've been doing this, I've heard the Colwell's Wealth, I've heard the Recio, I've heard the Revis, I've heard the Slicers. The last thing, and everybody says this, and they're 100% right. The last thing a fire service needs is another acronym. We really don't. But by the time you sit and think through 14 points of Colwell's Wealth or Slicers, listen, here's your job: suppression, survivability. It'll lead to stabilization. Those are the three things we need. These are the three things we focus on. There's a lot of things that fall into suppression. You're right. Ventilation versus anti-ventilation, air track management, bidirectional versus unidirectional versus dynamic air track management. All those things fill in. I don't want to think and discuss those at that point. I know about them already because I know what I'm looking at when I get there. That's suppression. Survivability. I'm going to look at that with my thermal imager. I'm going to walk around with my camera like Chief Starnes teaches. I'm going to do my 360 size up with the camera in my hand. I'm going to identify survivable spaces. Even if the windows are closed, I can still tell through thermal bridging. That room's hot. That room's got a door closed. That room does not have a door closed. I can do that. And you know how I get to do that? I get that with practice because I do it even when there's no fires. So we got to get our leaders in the fire service to understand that, start making these processes that tie suppression and survivability together, which will lead us to the stabilization of the incident when it's all said and done. And we go back to the training. Andy's got a great program coming out next Monday. I hope whoever's listening to this takes an opportunity to listen to what he has to say, because that leads to suppression. That leads to survivability. It's a free class. The information is there for you. It's being spoon-fed to you. The only thing a student has to do is want to hear it. but it's out there today. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does lots of free webinars. He makes them available all the time. And again, like you just said, you always know as the officer to take that tick with you when you get off the apparatus. And you were I guess one of our presenters on that webinar with Andy was on, and this is the key, is that we have this great tool today that can see things that we can't see. That's what it boils down to. It's like the old, when you were a kid, X-ray glasses. You sent $1 to that comic book clip and you'd X-ray glasses. But the fact is, the tick is your X-ray glasses when you're looking at a building with a fire going on. And if you use it correctly, then you're going to know for the most part. But if you use it, if you learn how to use it and don't assume you know how to use it, because how many times have Andy and I talked, or he's been on the show or in a webinar where he says, well, a lot of you think you know what the fire is going to look like, but you don't. Nope. You don't know. And the Max Firebox team, when they work with Andy one-on-one, they present it in if you remember the blocks that you used in kindergarten to start learning your alphabet, they presented that same simple manner, how easy it is to simply use a tick camera, as long as you know how to read it and you know how to use it properly. From the moment you arrive on the scene, that camera has to be in the first IC's hand right away to make that 360. And I would agree. And they just have to, that has to be part of the routine. It can't be on a special occasion. Well, that fire was a little bad, so we pulled it out. But the other one, we could just see it was a small bedroom. No, you can't. You don't know it's a small bedroom fire. What you see may only be a small amount of flame, but you don't know what hasn't made itself to that window or presented itself enough that they could do it. Plus, they may be dead already because of, if it was incipient for a while and that smoke was in there, and you said, well, it's not that big a deal because there's not a lot of active fire in there. We don't have to go up. And then you come out and you find them, you get upstairs and you find them gone already. So
it certainly could have been that it's down to the decay stage, which you think is the incipient stage that burned already for 20 minutes. It just never breached the compartment.
Right.
Right. Absolutely.
So, the fact is that we cannot keep relying on what was. We can't even necessarily keep relying on what is. We have to always plan for what will be.
I would agree. And there's been many a times, and I'm sure you would agree in your career, Steve, that you showed up to an incident and you were surprised by something that was on that scene that you never anticipated seeing before. Oh. We've all got those stories and we can talk days about them.
Yeah, but without a doubt.
And you bring up a great point about Andy and the Max Firebox. We use the Max Firebox here in Jersey as well. I have one as well that we use to emphasize the lessons that we teach in fire behavior with everybody's cameras. And if there's one thing that I'm sure Andy will talk about Monday, I personally have a FLIR K55 that I own myself. I'm in the process of getting a Seek Fire Pro 300. The department next to me uses a Bullard. One of the fire academies I teach at, there's a MSA. So all four cameras are going to look at the same fire and show four different pictures. And unless every fire department is going out with their members with the camera they purchased and is training on that camera, on how that camera views that incident, it's really for naught. They have to get that camera. They got to get that piece of equipment in their hand and they got to start working with it.
Right. And it can't just stay in the truck.
No.
Okay. Because that won't help anybody. Won't help you as a firefighter. Won't help the people inside the facility, the house, nope, or whatever it is. It's not going to help them because, again, time. There's one thing we can't take away, and we can't. I tell my kids that when I teach them, and they didn't study and they didn't study for several months. And I said, look, I don't have that wand, that little thing from Harry Potter that turns back time so I can change something. We don't have that ability, and neither does the fire service. We cannot take back time and go back and do a redo.
Nope. No,
we don't have that luxury.
There's no dress rehearsal in this business.
Exactly.
When we're going out the door for an incident, there's no dress rehearsal. We're professionals, and this is big time. This is the real show. So there's no There's even the ringing fire alarms. We dress, we prepare. Okay, we're glad that sometimes when it's nothing, okay, but we were ready and we knew. And even the conversations that we have in the apparatus when we know we get an address. Okay, we know what development that's in. The address suggests that it's a multiple dwelling. We know that's that section of town. They're attached at the kitchen and the bathroom area. So voids are in the center of the building. All right, and so we're already talking. We're already putting this baseline information together. And hopefully everybody who's listening is doing that too. When you start getting in that rig, you're not just waiting to hear something on the radio. You're thinking, okay, I know that address. I've been around that development, or I know that section of town. They're duplexes, single stories. They got cellars. They're on a slab. Whatever it is, they're peak roofs, they're flat roofs. There's always an addition on that area, or those are the things. And you start putting the compartment into your mind so you can start to anticipate fire behavior for suppression that's going to lead to survivability and overall stabilization. So you got to start thinking that process very early.
Oh yeah, especially today with everybody on intercom on the apparatus, or in most departments on intercom during the thing. If that officer has that address come up on the MDT and he starts telling the people, the crew, okay, this is where we're going. This is what we have. We know that we have a hydrant here, here, here. We know what's here. We know what's there in this house, because these 8 to 10 houses in a row all are identical. And you share that, and the crew starts talking about it in the crew cabin. Then people are going to be on the same page, and everybody's going to know who's pulling what, depending on which side they pull up to, or the officer's going to tell you, we're pulling on the right side. So your seat, you're going to pull the first line, and you're going to take us back to the hydrant and do a reverse lay, and then come back up and pick up the line. So when you have an officer and the firefighters and the driver all working together in harmony as they're on their way to the call. And again, if you watched LA County Fire and Rescue on NBC, if you watch that, you'll hear that those officers and every one of those fire responses, especially, but even on the EMS responses, each officer was guiding the 3 other firefighters or 4 other firefighters on that apparatus exactly where they were going, what they had. They were getting other stuff on the other channel of the radio, and they were able to tell everybody, this is what we're doing, this is what you're going to do first, this is what we're going to do second, and then we're going to do this third. And when they got off, it was like well choreographed dance, okay? Because everybody knew what to do, where to do it, and when to do it. And that's what we have to try to look for in our own departments.
Well, compare it to what we used to get when we used to run. The plectron would go off. Plectron.
Yeah, I remember plectrons, yeah.
Right? Or the pager would go off, and you address on a reported fire. You get to the firehouse, you get in the rig. You didn't have MDTs with updates on notes. You didn't have hydrant locations on your computers. You didn't have headsets. Everybody was, right. You didn't even have computers.
What computers?
Yeah. So you really, when I tell you, you know the deal, Steve. You were there. You made the turn on the street. You got smoke. You knew you had a fire. You didn't have the resources, the capabilities that we had, 3-4 decades ago. And today is, to me, no excuse for not maximizing the capabilities of the information that's available to the fire service today. It's there for you. It's there. You're not going to know it all. We're not going to know everything before we arrive, but it's the things that you can figure out when you get there. So I don't know if you're first due, okay, you know the area. So I'm coming in second due sometimes. Okay, we're second due. Spot a hydrant on the way in. Look past the building, see if there's one closer. Maybe it's faster for us to go out. Maybe it's around the corner. All right, so we're second due, so we're going to be supplied. But again, think every call. I don't care if it's working fire, food on the stove, a dead battery, and a detector. Those are the things we do going out the door every time. We're going to be second. Spot a plug, spot a hydrant. Faster to lay in or faster to lay out. We're always looking to see how we're going to make this better, always. And if we're doing it at the nonsense calls or the nuisance calls, I think a lot of people call it now, when it comes where the proverbial product is hitting the fan, then we're going to be able to do it a lot easier when we get there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really liked when Chief Kevin Burns was on here a couple of times, and when I got to talk with him personally, is the fact that he remembers those earlier days, because he's only 2 years or 3 years younger than I am. But the fact is, he saw those changes and he wanted to grow with those changes. He wanted to learn each time he came up in the ranks. He wanted to learn more and more, and how, not for his own edification, but to provide better protection to the community where he and I both live. And to me, that's the epitome of who we should look to be. And like you said, like Chief Starnes and like Andy himself and other great firefighters that we know who were around in those early days and still teach today, but they're not teaching what they only learned when they were back then. They teach us today what they've learned through their careers and why there were changes made and why those changes were important and why we still may have to make changes even after we listen to their class and sit down with them and they teach us for 2 hours. We still may have to change on a particular response, and we have to be ready, willing, and able to do that.
Oh, I agree. Take a look at the recruit who's coming through the academy today and compare them to a leader in the fire service like Starnes. Andy Starnes started in the same seat or a similar seat as that recruit starting in today. The difference is the decision, the choices that are made. And everybody can make their own choice when they join the fire service. There's no draft that brings you into the fire service.
Right.
Nobody holds you at gunpoint. You decided to come here. You got the best job in the world, or you're participating in one of the best careers in the world, if you ask me. So what you do with it is completely on you, but don't excuses. The ability for you to better the service and yourself are always there. They're always there. And if somebody doesn't maximize that, there's only so much, I think, leaders like, Chief Brunacini or Chief Burns or even Chief Starnes are able to do. If you're not going to want it, not going to want it. It's, and that's the sad part. It really is, but the ability to have that information today is 1,000 times easier than it was than when you and I were starting. Without
sure.
kidding. And, even just talking with Andy or talking with Chief Burns, we did a burn together a couple of years ago and Kill the Flashover, and we had compared some notes, and even just talking with some of the people out in Columbus, you can't help but absorb different things and learn different things and say, okay, what, that might work when I get back home. Let me try that. That makes a lot of sense. And even some of the things that we worked with Chris from first, just with the Anthos tools, like, holy moly, we didn't even know that can happen. We're gonna implement that when we get back, So yeah, as much as we taught out there, and our guys were busy, we were busy. But boy, we absorbed a lot of good knowledge from a lot of people out there too. So it's a great opportunity, always, to learn something new, especially in this profession.
Absolutely, and you know what? It's a requirement. We have to continue to learn new things to do our jobs better and to serve our communities more professionally. Okay, again, like you said, it does make a difference if you're a career firefighter, part pay, volunteer. We still serve professionally in our communities, and we have to be committed to doing the best jobs we can. Not a matter of egos. It's not a matter of who gets more saves. It's a matter of who do we save and how do we keep ourselves safe at the same time. And that's what we have to do. Make sure we save our community, save property when we can, but after the people, we have to make sure we're safe and save what we can of the material part of it as well.
And we can't discount the fact that as leaders in the fire service, even as officers, we have to make sure everybody goes home.
Exactly.
And mental, physical well-being. We talk at the kitchen table every morning. What are we doing today, Capt? We're going home tomorrow. That's what we're doing today. We're going home tomorrow, and that's common. We're going home tomorrow. That's number one. And everything we do from there is driving to that point, and that's what we're doing.
That's a great way to wrap it up. It really is. That's our job. We're going to go home tomorrow.
We're going home tomorrow. That's our job.
Great. Capt, thank you again so much. I know it's a busy schedule. We got to rush around to try to find a date to get you here, and I'm so thrilled that we were able to do it. You always share such great information with our viewers and listeners. You're a great teacher, but you never browbeat anybody. You're just teaching. Again, you teach like we're still sitting at that kitchen table, and we're just talking it out, and you're telling us how to be better at what we do.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share some time with you, Steve. Always willing to come back and talk like we do. And I'm glad that people are interested in what we have to say. And I'm sure it's about saying that none of us take the fact that people listen to these podcasts lightly. I mean, the fact that people sign up and listen to them and hear what we have to say is flattering. We're always blessed that people would give us the gift of their time as well. And, it's knowledge is power, and I'm a firm believer in sharing the wealth. I'm not hard to reach. And like you said, you're going to share contact info for me. I would encourage everybody to reach out. Anything I can do for anybody at any time, be happy to do it. If I can just say one thing about Kill the Flash, we do have some great training opportunities coming up. And again, a great bunch of guys with Kill the Flash over, started by Joe Starnes. Again, guys that just want to share. None of us make any money doing this. We're really just in this to make sure that people are safe and people go home. That's the most important thing. We're going to be hosting an online hangout December 8th at 5:00 p.m. It's a Friday night hangout. We call it Friday Night Happy Hour. We're going to be talking fire behavior. As a matter of fact, this topic this month coming, last one of the year, is going to be on strategy and tactics. It's going to be on suppression and survivability. So if you're interested in coming, we're going to put an invitation out on our website at killtheflashover.com. Shoot us an email. Be happy to send you a free link to sit and talk fire with us. We'll be announcing the spring 2024 semester at that as well. So if anybody's interested in signing up, we'll have more information on the actual program. And hopefully we'll get to see you in class and we'll get to share more great information with you.
That's great. We'll make sure to put that on there as well. It's December 8th, right?
December 8th, 5:00 Eastern Standard Time.
Good. All right. We'll do that. Captain Mike Daley joined us once again, ladies and gentlemen. We are so happy to have him anytime he has the opportunity to be with us, to teach us, and that we can learn from. And again, we said it earlier in the show, we're going to say it again. To be a great firefighter, you have to be the best that you can be and always be willing to learn. And that's what it boils down to. Cap, thanks again. Stay safe, stay well. I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you in the not too distant future. Have a great holiday season, my friend. All right, we'll be in touch. Take care. Again. Folks, if you're watching the video, this will be the end of the video. If you're listening to the audio, we'll be back with just a few more items coming up after these words. But to all of you, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and let's make sure everyone goes home. Bye-bye now.